Hello, and welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jennifer Chambers. You know that I'm passionate about uncovering the truth. Here, we're taking that passion to the dark heart of the Pacific Northwest. As a true crime and historical writer, I've spent years immersed in the chilling archives of this region. Each week, we'll explore cases, both ancient and modern, of murder, unexplained events, strange places, and those who have simply vanished. We'll dig into the research, connecting the dots between past and present, revealing the threads of mystery that weave through our incredible, yet often unsettling, landscape. Prepare to be captivated as we discover that while times may change, the darkest aspects of human nature remain hauntingly the same. On a storm-swept night in late July 1865, a paddle steamer named the Brother Jonathan left San Francisco, bound for the Pacific Northwest. Within hours, it would strike hidden rocks near Point St. George and sink into cold water off the mouth of the Klamath River, just south of the Oregon border. More than 200 people, passengers and crew, were lost. For more than a century after, the wreck lay hidden under mud and sand, a rumor of gold and ghost stories clinging to its hull. I'm Jennifer Chambers, and this is Same Crime, Different Time. Tonight, we tell the story of the Brother Jonathan, the ship, the disaster, the salvage, and the strange afterlife of a shipwreck that has become both legend and litigation. Some key facts up front. The Brother Jonathan struck an uncharted reef near Point St. George off Crescent City, California, on July 30th, 1865. Contemporary accounts and later scholarships place the number of those lost at well over 200 people, making the wreck one of the deadliest maritime disasters on the Pacific coast in the 19th century. Now, I have citations for all of these facts that I'm going to talk about, and those will all be listed on my Substack as well as linked on my webpage. So I want to make sure you guys know that this is from research. I'm not making it up. Part 1, the ship and its world. Now, to understand why the Brother Jonathan mattered, besides the fact that it was a pretty incredibly awful disaster, we need to understand the world that she sailed in. And this is part of what I love. As you know, the research part is my favorite part, and I like to set the scene. So she was built in 1850, and she was later owned by interests that were connected to the California steam lines. The Brother Jonathan was a side-wheel paddle steamer. This was an enormous, noisy iron and wood creature that linked San Francisco with northern ports and British Columbia. This was all during an era of feverish movement up and down the Pacific coast. She carried everything. She carried passengers, mail, cargo, and sometimes this also included coins, or important contracts, and the private gold shipments that lubricated the frontier economies. A newspaper clip says, quote, "The Brother Jonathan, a noble steamer, has been lost," unquote, reported a San Francisco paper, in August 1865. This was an early obituary for a vessel that had been a backbone of the Pacific trade. Now, the ship's manifest and freight records, which were compiled by investigators and later historians, show a heavy cargo and a manifest listing passengers who were bound for Portland, Victoria, and other ports. So this was an ordinary West Coast leg of a once ordinary steam line in the tumultuous seas. I don't know if you've ever watched any of the shows like Deadliest Catch, but it seems like the technology is different, but essentially you're still just a cork bobbing in the ocean, and the ocean's going to do what it wants. So I can't even imagine the kind of fortitude it would take to be a captain of one of these ships in the 1800s, let alone repeatedly if you're a captain for a freighter. Part 2, July 1865, the final voyage. Okay, so on July 28th through 29th of 1865, the Brother Jonathan loaded passengers and cargo in San Francisco. Now, some accounts say that the ship was heavily laden, but historians have differed on whether the overloading was the cause of the ship going down. I mean, it certainly was a cause, but it definitely wasn't the only one. The voyage north from San Francisco is stormy. The seas grew rough. The ship returned to Crescent City in the harbor briefly, and then it left again. Then on the afternoon and night of July 29th through 30th, the storm intensified. In the early hours of July 30th, 1865, the brother Jonathan struck a submerged rock near Point St. George, which was pretty rapid to help it go down. It took, I guess they say it took about 45 minutes. According to survivor testimony that was compiled by newspapers and inquiries, it didn't take long before the steamer foundered and sank. Only a small number of the people on board survived. It's been reported as either 18 or 19 survivors in different places, but 225 people is the rough number of people who died. Passengers had been seasick in their bunks. In the dark, the boats were swamped and the ship sank swiftly, said survivor reports. Now, 1865 was a pretty turbulent year in the United States. Civil War in the East had ended only months before, and the Pacific coast was a corridor of people who were migrants. There were merchants, prospectors, and army movements. Ship travel was definitely dangerous. And the loss of the brother Jonathan kind of rippled across the communities all the way from San Francisco to Victoria, because it was such an arterial line. The news of the wreck was serialized in newspapers up and down the coastline, which very purple prose, as they say, a lot of embellishments, but very story-like, the way that they talked about the shipwrecks. It helped add to the romanticization of the legend. Part 3. Aftermath on the shore. Bodies, debris, and early treasure fever. So Crescent City, California, and the nearby beaches became the grim scene of rescue attempts and of bodies washing ashore. Local residents, which include fishermen and volunteers, collected the survivors and the dead. Imagine the scene on this empty coastline, wreckage and personal effects, and bodies just littering the sands. Now, at the time, newspapers printed lists of the dead and the people who were lost, names of the immigrants, the soldiers, the miners, the wives, the children. And in the wake of that tragedy, rumors spread quickly about there being a possible treasure, gold that had been on board to pay for supplies or to help move the supplies that it was carrying northward. The treasure ship archive says, quote, "There were tales at once of bars of gold and pockets of coin," unquote. Now, some of the early salvage and local looting occurred almost immediately. People found coins and items among the debris. Over the following months and years, organized salvage efforts and diving and legal claims would further complicate the disaster story. And so the place of the wreck became not only a site of mourning, but a contested space of value, which is an interesting concept. Part 4, the legend, treasure, ghosts, and memory. So out of this tragedy grew folklore. The brother Jonathan acquired an almost mythic status in Northern California and Southern Oregon. There were tales of gold still lying in the holds, just offshore. There were stories about spectral lights seen off the headlands, of coins turning up on the beaches decades later. Treasure hunters were a constant presence from the late 19th century through the 20th. Some of them sought profit, of course, and others chased history. And late 19th, early 20th century recounting went, quote, "Old men on the beach would point to a dark swell and tell of the night the sea took the brother Jonathan and its fortune," unquote. These tales mixed real recoveries. Some of the coins and artifacts were reported being found in the wreck's aftermath and during early salvage. And they mixed them up with wishful thinking. The persistent belief in this sunken treasure sustained salvage ventures and court cases across generations. And I imagine some people found stuff that wasn't reported. Part 5, Modern Discovery and Salvage. For over a century, locating the actual wreck site proved difficult. There were lots of people who tried, though. The brother Jonathan lay buried under shifting sands and off a treacherous coastline of reefs and strong currents. In several areas alongside the west coast, there are a lot of dunes, and it's really surprising, if you've never been there, the winds shift the dunes so incredibly much. In the matter of a couple of years, there could be a giant dune where there was just bare beach before. And it's just the way that the weather works. So I imagine that it was pretty difficult. But then, in the late 20th century, there was renewed interest, as well as better technology, which helped change the game. In 1993, a group of researchers and salvage teams located the wreck site. Over the next few years, salvage operations did recover coins and artifacts. There was reporting around 1996 which indicated that portions of gold and other valuables had been recovered. And then, so this discovery transformed this local legend into an active commercial and legal story. Quote, portions of gold were recovered from the site in the 1990s, unquote, reported regional outlets. These salvage attempts prompted a long contested legal history. It's very interesting, the legality of the salvage. A lot of it depends on how far offshore these wrecks are. State claims, and then there's private salvage rights, and the role of federal admiralty law all played into who could recover and who could claim what was found. The wreck status as a grave site further complicated matters, right? Many people argued for protections and respectful treatment of the remains, which absolutely should be honored. But salvage interests argued for the economic value of the cargo that could be recovered. There were official meeting records and salvage proposals from the 80s and 90s that record the procedural history of all of it. It was pretty long and drawn out. Part 6, the human cost. We also need to reckon with broader impacts. So, other contemporary researchers note that the brother Jonathan and other similar contacts complicated and sometimes worsened public health and social dynamics for indigenous communities in the Pacific Northwest. Some histories connect the 19th century shipping and contact with outbreaks and ripple effects that devastated native populations. This was still happening in the 1860s. The wreck cannot be parceled as only maritime tragedy. It's part of a larger colonial and ecological history of the era. Also, for many coastal families, the ship's loss is a family story. There was an ancestor that was lost, a share of property that never got paid. There's names on all these stones and memorials. Memorials and plaques in Crescent City and regional historical accounts keep these memories present. The Brother Jonathan Vista Points and plaques are places where the dead are remembered and the living come to reckon. Part 7, why the Brother Jonathan still matters. So why retell the Brother Jonathan story? Because it sits at the intersection of disaster, memory, justice, and economy. It's a story about how communities respond to mass loss. I mean, the fact that all of these regular people came to the shore to try and save anyone they could from the ship is well worth remembering. There's also the treasure hunters and the courts. It's interesting. I was thinking when I was writing this about treasure hunting, I was thinking about, Robert Louis Stevenson and Treasure Island and how much those penny dreadful kind of stories added to the collective romanticization of shipwrecks and pirates and things like that. I mean, of course, it seems like it would just be free, right? Free treasure. You just have to find it. And you don't really think about who it belonged to. It's also the story about the historians and the descendants who keep trying to find the truth. And it's neat to think that there's ghost stories involved with it. There's several different ones, but basically it's all just a lot of it is the ghost lights and things like that. I think the bigger thing is about the ethics of salvage when human loss is involved, which is very important. And it's a local story that rippled a long way. It's a reminder that the history can be both a treasure map and a warning. The brother Jonathan is both an emblem of 19th century maritime risk and a mirror for the ways that we value our objects and our lives. If you're interested in reading more about this, the detailed histories and archival compilations that I drew on include their region's local historical society reports, there's some salvage documentation, and later there was book-length treatments of the wreck and its treasures, as I mentioned at the beginning. So I'll put a short reading list and the key online sources in the episode notes here so you can follow up. If you have family stories connected to the wreck or memories from the Crescent City shoreline, I'd love to hear from you. Send a note to the show. But for now, keep your eyes on the tide line and keep listening for the stories that the sea keeps telling. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening today. Please review and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out the show. And please leave us a voicemail at the Spotify link. Also, you can always feel free to send us an email at scdtmail@gmail.com or www.jennifer-chambers.com.